This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back to Live Talk with Dr. Beatrice Hill. And if we have any listeners today and you want to ask questions, by all means, use the upper right hand corner in the chat room. So we are welcoming back our guests today, Dr. Smith and Travis. So, Dr. B, you're muted, so unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. I appreciate you always keeping me abreast of what I'm doing. And yes, we have Travis here. And Travis is always great to go ahead and to help us and to explain what he feels since he has been through all of this, like many of you. And we have Dr. Smith, who is here, who is adjusting his camera right now so you can see him. And good day, Travis. How are you?
Doing good, Dr. B. How's yourself? Thank you for
I'm
asking.
doing absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm all excited about the number of people who want to go ahead and do the DEA test. So that's great. We've got several people who have signed on with us today. And Dr. Smith is traveling again, as you can tell, because he has his clothes in the car. He's got them all hung up, ready to go. So he's a traveling man. What can I tell you? Well, anyway, he comes and he goes. So we had a really good conversation going yesterday, and I was hoping that we would kind of pick it up from today. Hey, Dr. Smith, you have come and you have gone, and he's gone again. Um, but it's been very interesting, all the things that you have been through, as well as the things that you have talked about that of people that you know who have been through or who have died or whatever, just like you helped out the people in that gas station about a month and a half ago. Dr. Smith is back with us again. Dr.
Sorry,
Smith,
I
I
had a
thought we could.
little signing on, and the software decided to censor me today and wouldn't allow me to turn my microphone on.
I see. So you are censored.
I am officially censored by the software genies. Yes,
I thought maybe we could pick up from where we left off yesterday, if that's all right with you.
that's fine with me. But let me just first make sure: is my camera coming through okay now?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, is my microphone coming through okay now?
It's coming through just fine.
As you can see, we just got back from another horse show, and all the horse show clothes are hanging in the back of the car. But I don't have reception. We live so far out in the country. I have to drive into town and sit in the parking lot of the library in order to do these shows. Now, when you say you wanted to pick up where we left off yesterday, I'm assuming that means you want to pick up with the slide we were looking at, the slide that we call the stages of addiction. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. B, we left off yesterday with a statement uh, uh, of reality, a reality that we really aren't really sure how best to deal with, and that is the fact that while these experts, while these uh, uh, addiction experts, these psychiatrists have they have not been honest about the scientific research that has been done. They ignore the findings of Daglish and Watson, both of whom did excellent studies, used the PET scan, positron emission tomography, and showed that there was no surge in brain dopamine when an opioid was administered. And yet these clowns are out there running around every day saying that uh, uh, these people are suffering from opioid addiction because they got a surge in brain dopamine when they took the opioids, although there's no scientific evidence for that. And there's the slide, the stages of addiction by Dr. Volkow and her crew. Um, and Dr. B, the problem is, and we don't have a solution for this. The problem is these guys have cloaked themselves in some really big words. And and as a physician, when you see someone cloak themselves in really big words, what they're trying to say is, I know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And it's going to be hard to get past these big words. It's going to be hard to get past these big words. And that's going to be a real challenge to have a meaningful discussion with the public. And it's going to be hard to say to the public, you know, some of these big words are valid, some of these big words aren't valid, and that's going to be a difficult situation for the public. I do think at some level, though, their argument falls apart, and where I see their argument falling apart is right there on your screen, on that diagram, and the fact that we have Travis here with us. This is where we can gain, I believe, we can gain some traction and some credibility. It's impossible for me to sit here and go, that word's okay, that word's not okay, and establish credibility in that manner. However, when we point out what they say about withdrawal, and then we bring Travis into the dialogue, and he shares his experience of withdrawal, and then he reflects upon what these clowns say withdrawal is. That's where I think we gain some credibility, Dr. B.
Yes, I would say so. But you know, you always take these big words and break them down for other people to understand. I mean, I realize big words are big words and they get confusing, but you know what I'm saying?
But some of their words are made up words. I can't even break them down. On the screen there, you know, neuroadaptions. There's several on the screen here. I don't know if I can actually.
Let me see if I
Yeah.
can blow it up any
Okay.
bigger.
Here you go. I cannot choose a better example than the one that I'm about to read. Shifting drivers resulting from neuroadaptions. Shifting drivers. What is a shifting driver? And what is a shifting driver from neuroadaptations? Travis, you've lived through withdrawal. Okay, do you have any clue what they are talking about when they say shifting drivers resulting from neuroadaptations? And by the way, they're not specifically just talking about withdrawal. They're talking about what they refer to as the 3 stages of addiction, which I should read. Binge and intoxication, withdrawal and negative effect, and preoccupation and anticipation. And these 3 stages of addiction result from shifting drivers resulting from neuroadaptations. Travis, does that make any sense to you?
Not to me, Dr. Smith. None at all.
We would
Sounds
welcome
like
somebody on the show that could explain this to us.
it sounds like it's a circular explanation or a circular discussion.
Shifting drivers resulting from neuroadaptations. All right, neuroadaptations, you know, that means that when you take the opioid, it changes something about the nerves, okay, or something about the circuitry. I should probably say the circuitry, not the nerve itself, but the circuitry. That somehow the opioid changes the circuitry of the brain. And I think what they're saying here is that they claim the surge in dopamine, the one that doesn't happen, they're claiming that the surge in dopamine is changing the circuitry of the brain and rewiring the brain in essence. Okay, because this surge in dopamine occurred in the pleasure centers of the brain, and since it occurred in the pleasure centers of the brain, the circuitry is now in effect hijacking the brain. Travis, does that sound anything at all like what happened to you? Did you take the opioid, find it so pleasurable that now you're just going to spend all your money, all your time, neglect your family, neglect your responsibility, become practically homeless just in pursuit of chasing a high?
No, Dr. Smith, that's not what happened to me. I've told you this before and I'll say it again. I was only trying not to be sick.
I'm sorry, Travis, but I don't see trying not to be sick anywhere on the chart there by Dr. Volkow and her crew. That's not what it says. It says you were feeling reduced excitement, Travis. Travis, can you explain to us what it feels like to have reduced excitement and how going out and chasing down opioids to get high treats your reduced excitement? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, for one, I never had any excitement at all, period. Like the entire time I was on opioids, none of it was exciting. It was a miserable existence.
It is practically insulting to say that you felt reduced excitement. You almost died. And yet these guys are saying that no, you were not in a deadly situation. You weren't in a situation where you were going to get hurt. You were just feeling reduced excitement. Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a joke to me.
To me, anybody that turns their back on the scientific method is a joke, and that's what these guys have done. Dr. Volkow and her minions, that's what they have done. They have turned their back on the scientific method and on the foundations of science. And instead of embracing the foundations of science, they have chosen to embrace their own opinions. And that's what you see on the screen in front of you here. At least when it comes to the opioids, we're not talking about amphetamines, cocaine, alcohol, gambling, anything else. We're only talking about the opioids. And at least when it comes to the opioids, they have abandoned the ways of science. They have thrown opioids into the same basket as amphetamines, cocaine, and other addictive substances, and said that that opioids are also addictive, even though there is no science to support that statement. There is no science to support that the opioids are addictive. Travis, you've seen the science. You've got a pretty good idea what happened to you. Okay. Can you explain for our listeners in your own words what you think happened to you after you'd been taking the opioids for a while?
Well, what I think happened to me after I'd been taking the opioids for a while, I think my DNA had been poisoned. I think my blood had been poisoned. My DNA had been permanently changed. Now I didn't know that at the time until, I got the Smith test done and I got my catecholamines back, and, I researched everything, and everything was explained to me. But, you know, if I didn't know anything about the Smith test and we're talking about, past tense, what I thought I was going through, I didn't know what I was going through before I learned about the Smith test. Um, they kept telling me I was a drug addict and that, mentally something's wrong with me. But, all I knew is I got real sick, and my doctor put me on medicine. I started taking that medication. And before I know it, if I didn't have this medicine, I was very ill, very sick. So it wasn't until I found out about the Smith test to where I actually had an understanding of what was actually going on with me. Because the Smith test and my catecholamines, like I said, my catecholamines to me is my evidence. So once I got those catecholamines and I read them, and then I researched everything that was going on with me, that was the point that I got my first understanding of what I was going through. The Smith test actually helped me understand what I was going through.
Travis, you said you got sick. What would happen to make you sick? What was it that made you sick?
Well, I mean, if let me say, hypothetically speaking, if I had already ran out, or if I had just used my last opioid pill, or whatever, um, within a couple of hours, you're gonna start feeling sick. You're gonna start. How do I explain this? You're gonna start feeling the stomach cramps. Um, you're gonna start feeling the stomach pains. You're gonna start having a runny nose. You're gonna start having runny eyes. You're just gonna start feeling the sickness. And the longer you go without an opioid, the worse that it gets. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse until you either get an opioid or you take a buprenorphine or a Suboxone. That's the only way not to be sick. Either or. You either got to take an opioid or you have to take a buprenorphine or a Suboxone. One of the two.
So Travis, what I hear you saying is you got sick when you tried to stop taking the opioids.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And the sickness was very difficult to endure.
Oh my gosh. Very difficult is using difficult would be an understatement. I don't even know of a big enough word to use for what I was experiencing. All I can say is I wish that on no person, not even my worst enemy. I don't wish it on anybody. Like, it was the worst sickness I have ever been through in my entire life.
Now, Travis, we've talked about this quite a bit, and you've got some level of insight. What is your understanding now of what happened to you when you got sick? What was going on inside your body?
Well, um, the medicine, of course, poisoned my blood and changed my DNA. And it went in there and it turned a bunch of my receptors off permanently. So basically my body's not functioning properly. I lost control of my organs and basically everything. So, when you go into someone's body and you shut off all these receptors, it's kind of like going inside of a house and messing with their what do you call that?
Breaker box.
The breaker box. Yeah, it's kind of like going into a house and messing with the breaker box and then messing with all the breakers. The house is not going to function properly. You're not going to have electricity in certain places. That's exactly what's happened to my body.
Chrissy, if you can, let's pull up DNA slide number 2. That's the one with the red and blue columns, and let's show the audience what Travis is talking about. All right, so Travis, while Chrissy pulls that up, the graphic that we're about to show, this is from our science. This is from our study. Dr. B made this happen. And what you're going to see is this is a schematic, a graphic, a representation of one particular gene. The name of this gene is OPRM1 gene. OP stands for opioid, R stands for receptor, M stands for muse. So this is the gene that makes the main opioid receptor in the body. And that's the gene up on top. This is how genetic people talk to each other. Those are the images that they use. Okay, there is a tremendous amount of information contained in that visual right there. But we draw the viewer's attention down to the bottom, and you see the red column, blue, and the blue column. The blue column represents people who are opioid naive, people who have never taken an opioid, and the red column represents the opioid dependent, people who get sick when they attempt to stop taking the opioids. Now, specifically, what Travis is referring to there is that those red and blue columns are located on these tiny little switches. These tiny little switches that are known as CPG islands. Okay, I don't want to get too far into the science at all, and it is way okay to think of them as little switches, because that's exactly what they are. They're like little light switches. The ones that are just located in the main part of the gene, they're like light switches. But the ones that are located in that salmon colored area, what's called the promoter region, that's a very, very important and very sensitive area of every gene. Every functional gene, at least my understanding is, every functional gene has a promoter region. This is where the heavy lifting is done. That's what Travis is referring to when he says the breaker box. Okay, you turn off a switch in the promoter region, you're turning off some really heavy stuff. And as you can see there, in our study, we found DNA damage all up and down the gene. All up and down the gene. Some of it was actually inside the promoter region. So Travis, you and I like to have conversations about common sense. I think it appeals to both of our personalities. We both see ourselves as practical people, and we both rely upon what is commonly known as common sense. Common sense is not always so common. But Travis, common sense for both of us, and I think this is some place where we share great agreement. And we hope other people with common sense share our agreement. Travis, common sense. If you go into a gene, now genes are nothing but little factories. That's what a gene is. It's a factory. This factory makes opioid receptors. This factory specifically makes mu opioid receptors, the main opioid receptor. You go into that factory and you start shutting things down left and right. You start going to these CPG islands, which are nothing but little switches, and everywhere where the red column is bigger than the blue column is an area where potentially, we don't know for sure, but potentially that area of the DNA got shut down. That area of the DNA got silenced. Okay, you go into a gene, which is nothing but a factory, and start shutting stuff down left and right. Travis, common sense. When this gene turns around and makes its opioid receptor, which it's gonna do because that's what genes do, they do what they're gonna do. When this gene turns around and makes its opioid receptor, common sense now, Travis, what's the possibility or the probability that that opioid receptor is going to be normal?
It's not going to be normal. It's going to be
Not.
abnormal.
It's not. It's not. Travis, why are people having so much trouble understanding this? It just, are they just not listening? Are they not open-minded? Do they not want to know? Travis, you and I just found common ground to agree upon. It's common sense. B, why are people struggling with this?
Dr. B, your microphone's off.
Because they've been told over and over and over again that they have a brain disorder, that they are craving this wonderful feeling, not being sick, but wonderful feeling, a high on doing this. And after all these people have agreed with this Dr. Vokow that they have this brain disorder, why would they think anything other than that? They've been told that for 35 years.
Travis, what are your thoughts?
Um, I agree with what Dr. B is saying. I don't I don't technically want to use the word brainwashed, but once you have the government and big corporations and people telling you something for so long and bashing it into your head and bashing it into your head, and this is what the problem is, this is what's going on, and once you've heard something so many times, I think you start to actually believe it. And so I think people are having a hard time with the new evidence, with the new science. And that's something that I clearly can't understand because I'm a person of proof and a person of science. So if you can prove me something with science, I'm going to listen to it automatically. That's just who I am because I feel like it's common sense. If science can back it up, then that's where I'm going to lead towards, and that's what I'm going to believe in is the science because I'm a person that believes science never lies. So, with that being said, I can see why they're not understanding it, but at the same token, I don't get why they're not because, like I said, science never lies.
Well, to me, 35 years ago, they put all of their faith and hope and everything into what they considered their findings with the little mice with all the little glass tubes in their heads.
The
But
discovery stuff.
yes, but it totally ignored the PET scan studies, the studies that have been done after theirs. They weren't done directly after theirs, they were done several years after theirs. But once you've been proved that your study is not right, that it's incorrect, you really need to look at the other studies and have an open mind and try to recreate it like another one of the scientists did. They created the same thing, and what they come up with, no dopamine rush to the brain. So you've got these studies that are telling this first study, Vokow's study, that you're wrong, and then our study that's saying, hey, you're not only wrong, but we found out that it's coming from your DNA that's been poisoned. Hey, wake up, look at this. But they are so stuck in the fact that they have cemented their feet into their first belief and don't want to move from that.
I don't think they want to prove that they were wrong. I don't think they want to admit that they were wrong.
I agree
Um,
with you. I
That's
agree
one
with
thing
you.
I've learned about big corporations and anything to do with the government. If they make a mistake, they'd rather blame it on something else than have to actually admit that they made a mistake.
It's like if I lie, you swear to it.
Pretty much. That's what
Yeah.
I've seen from them over the
Yeah, I
years.
like
So
that. Make that up.
Pardon me? You broke
I
up.
like that. Make that up. I lie and you swear to it.
Yeah. If
I
I
lie
lie,
and you.
you swear to it. So everybody is backing that first study because that was the study. And if I'm telling you that that study is correct and that's what it is, then you all are supporting it. And you do
What
not go beyond that.
you're saying there that they cite the 1988 Daishiari study, which using a ancient technique of microdialysis, which means you held the mouse really still, drilled a hole in its skull, stuck a glass tube in it, and pretended you could measure the dopamine. That they actually did claim to see a surge in dopamine in the brain when they administered morphine to the mouse. However, in 2009 and 2014, when first Daglish and then Watson came back and did studies using humans, um, they did, and they used the superior technique of the PET scan, positron emission tomography. They did not see a surge in brain dopamine when an opioid was administered. And what you're saying there, B, is that it's scientifically dishonest to cite the 1988 article while you're ignoring the more recent and modern and better technique studies of 2009 and 2014.
That's 1000% right. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm saying. And I still go back to I lie and you swear to it. I
Yeah.
stick to my guns and you're going to stick with me. Don't open up your mind to anything else. Just look at the study we did. We did this study. We stand behind this study. Wait a minute. There's 3 other studies that have gone on since then, and they're all saying no dopamine rush to the brain. Where's their
Exactly.
backup studies? Where is their studies? All it
Well,
is
this is where they've replaced science with their opinion. And if you're really, really smart, I guess you don't need science, and your opinion will replace science.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I see
well, you
what
That's
know
you're
what they
saying.
say. They say everybody has an opinion, but you
right.
know how that is.
I know the last part of that.
Okay, good.
We're trying to keep this to be a family-oriented show here.
I'll behave.
Okay.
But definitely, I think science should come first. Like if the science has proven something that it's not right, it's not it's and that what you're saying is wrong, science should come first, in my opinion. If the science can back it up, the science can prove it, then we need to go towards the science and back that up because there's nothing left to argue about. If we have the science that proves something, there's nothing left to argue about.
Look who's here, the beautiful Chrissy.
Hmm.
Chrissy,
God
coming to kick
bless
us
you.
out.
Yeah, unfortunately. Thank you guys so much. Always interesting conversations. I love to listen. So, thank you for coming on the show today. And welcome to our guests that showed up. And don't forget, we are here every Monday through Thursday, 1:30 to, I'm sorry, 12:30 to 1. Ahead of myself. So, thank you for attending.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.